In the final minutes of Monday's January 6th committee hearing, the panel said that the Trump campaign misled donors who thought their money was going to the so-called Election Campaign Defense Fund. One former Trump campaign staffer told the committee she does not believe the fund even exists. According to the committee, $250 million raised after the election actually boosted other vehicles like the president's Save America PAC. More than $200,000 went to Trump-owned hotels, $1 million to a foundation led by Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and $5 million to the company that helped to organize the January 6th rally ahead of that Capitol riot. So Harry Litman is with me now. He's a former U.S. attorney and former Deputy Assistant Attorney General. He is also the host of the Talking Feds podcast. So Harry, good to be with you. Thanks so much for joining us. So we saw yesterday a number of Republicans, even those close to the former president in his inner circle, testified under oath that they all knew that the election was legitimate. Yet former President Trump fundraised tens of millions of dollars for a legal defense to challenge that election. So could that warrant a criminal prosecution or further investigation, at least, from the DOJ?
Yeah, I think it could. And the reason is it was basically fraudulent. It was a lie. You saw on the hearing anyway, emblazoned across the top to donate to this election defense fund. By the way, a fairly despicable actions, sending his most steadfast donors 25 emails a day and getting them to donate $20, $30 at a time, and all for a kind of slush fund for himself. But this is the same conduct that Steve Bannon was prosecuted for. He told people that he solicited funds, but it wasn't for what he said. It's the same thing that Sidney Powell, Trump's lawyer, is now being investigated for by the Department of Justice. It's a fraud, and it's a federal fraud, given the use of the mails and such. So, yeah, I think it could be a whole new area of criminal inquiry.
And I'm kind of curious, and I think a lot of people watching yesterday are curious exactly what kind of power this committee has when it comes to such referrals. Committee Chairman Betty Thompson said yesterday that the committee doesn't have the authority to issue criminal referrals, but some other members of the committee seem to be walking that back. So basically, does the committee have that power, and do you expect them to issue any referrals to the DOJ?
Yes, they have the power, and it was an odd statement by the chair. They've already, in fact, made criminal referrals for contempt. There obviously are stress points within the committee on this, right? You have Schiff and Lofgren saying we haven't decided yet. You have Luria saying we ought to do it. I would have said until yesterday, yeah, I expect them to do it. But if the chair is out there saying we don't have the authority, for even if it's not accurate, it seems to me a pretty strong indication that they're not going to do it. And I can see why they wouldn't. I can see their concluding look. Garland is going to keep his own judgment anyway. And if we do a referral and he does wind up prosecuting Trump, it'll be, if nothing else, a talking point for the right to say this is just the department doing the political bidding of the Congress. It's all the Democrats and the like. So I'm not sure they gain very much from it. Do they have the power, though? Certainly.
Interesting. Okay, that's a really interesting dynamic to keep an eye on, considering all of the politics on the outside of this. I mean, based on the testimony that you've seen so far, and I know we have more to go, but do you see anyone else in former President Trump's circle at risk of a criminal referral at this point?
A referral, who's to say? Because I think they're not going to do it, but I see people at risk of criminal prosecution by the department. And we know that the department is already independently convened two grand juries that are looking into, not the sort of marauders of January 6th, but the political officials. And yes, I think felt people like Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino were very much involved with what Trump was doing. So their fingerprints are on a lot of things. We know that who was to be the star of the show tomorrow, Jeffrey Clark, who tried to sort of stage a coup in the department, he's already taken the Fifth Amendment, fearing criminal liability. I think he's at some risk. John Eastman, I think, is at some risk also for trying to essentially do a scheme to subvert the election. And then who's to say whether it would be a big step to prosecute some of the members of Congress, and it would depend on their involvement, which we really don't know yet. But so, yeah, I think there are other heads that very well could roll, and it would be, all the weighty considerations that come into play when the department's deciding whether to prosecute a former president don't come into play for these other folks. And you can remember Watergate, where Nixon wasn't prosecuted, but all his higher officials were. That could happen here.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, and Eastman's certainly a main character in all of this. So you mentioned, of course, this is up to the Justice Department at the end of the day, but what would it take, do you think, for Attorney General Merrick Garland to prosecute the former president himself?
Yeah, well, so first it would take a showing under the traditional standards of the department that Trump is guilty of a crime and that you could get a conviction. That applies to anyone. I think there are sort of 4 different crimes in play. One of them is the financial one you just mentioned. And as to 2 or 3 of them, they have the goods. But it then appropriately leaves a whole set of considerations that you could classify under the rubric, is it for the good of the country? Gerald Ford decided to pardon Nixon. I think the verdict of history is that was wise. Those kinds of concerns, I think, will fall to Garland and probably to the president to consider. And it's not an easy call. It's not like Nixon, because Trump is now being just as brazen, just as unrepentant, just as damaging to the political system. So the rule of law considerations might cut in favor. But there are, for a former president, a whole set of other things to think about besides just, can they convict him? Which at this point, I think they could.
Interesting. And unlike other former presidents, this former president is still very much involved in Republican Party politics. Harry Litman, thank you so much for breaking that all down for us. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon as these hearings proceed. Thank you so much.